The Civil War is well known for great battles, famous generals, and large casualties. But there was a lesser-known side of the war, the guerrilla war, where bands of civilians and soldiers joined forces on both sides to create mayhem, chaos, and even murder. Quantrill's Raiders were the best known and arguably quite effective at hit-and-run raids, tying down Union forces who tried to locate and eradicate them. Their leader was a man of many contradictions and mystery, but his legacy extended far beyond the war. He was also a most wanted man and, along with Confederate Raider Colonel John S. Mosby, had the highest reported bounty on his head probably in U.S. history until Osama bin Laden came along. Who was William C. Quantrill? What were the Quantrill Raiders? Why were they famous? What legends did they create long after the Civil War? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, military veteran, historian, author, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. William Clark Quantrill was born in Canal Dover, now Dover, Ohio, on October 11, 1837, the oldest of 12 children, with 8 of them surviving infancy. His father, Thomas, was a coppersmith, and he and wife Caroline settled in Canal Dover the year 1836. Thomas became a schoolteacher and was the first principal of the Canal Dover Union School. William himself attended Union School, graduating in 1853, and following the death of Thomas, his father, in December 1854, he also became a teacher at Union School to support the family, but he only taught for a year. He then went west for a better life, but things did not really work out for him there, and he became involved in some colorful activity over the next 6 years, and led a checkered life that ultimately led to crime. After holding various unrewarding jobs in Mendota, Illinois, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Quantrill returned home in 1856. In February 1857, William headed to Kansas with locals Henry Torrey and Harmon Beeson, who were also hoping for a better life out west. They all settled in Johnson County, Kansas, near the Missouri border, and established the small town of Tuscarora Lake, named for the Tuscarawas River back home in Dover, Ohio. Torrey and Beeson made a deal and loaned Quantrill money for land in return for Quantrill providing labor on their land. But Quantrill failed to uphold his end of the bargain, so Torrey and Beeson sued him. The court settlement ordered Quantrill to repay both men, which he never did. Quantrill then had to move and live with other settlers arriving from Dover, but they accused Quantrill of stealing from them and he was banished from their community, finally leaving for Utah in 1858. Quantrill worked with an army wagon train, spending the following year farther west. Out west, Quantrill became a gambler, poker being his strong suit, going by the name of Charlie Hart. He returned to Kansas in 1859 and worked again at teaching until later that year he joined a gang, again using the name Charlie Hart. Quantrill then separated from that gang due to their being wanted for petty crimes and lived on the Delaware Indian Reservation north of the Kansas River. While living in both Kansas and Missouri, he purportedly earned money by aiding both free state men in liberating slaves and pro-slavery men by capturing and returning escaped slaves. In essence, he was an equal opportunity type of guy. Where Quantrill was politically was unclear. When in January 1860 he wrote his mother in stating his contempt for the murderer and robber John Brown, the abolitionist, and his sympathizers following the famous Harper's Ferry raid. In a great sense of irony, in December 1860, Quantrill and 5 Quaker abolitionists planned to liberate the slaves of one Morgan Walker, a slave owner in Jackson County, Missouri. But Quantrill warned the Walkers in advance and the Quakers were killed. Quantrill then openly opposed the violent anti-slavery movement in Kansas from the Jayhawkers, working as a runaway slave catcher, earning their rewards. By 1861, Quantrill was in jail in Lawrence, Kansas, charged with horse theft and other crimes. Making bail on April 3, 1861, he fled the jurisdiction to avoid standing trial. During this escapade, Quantrill joined the slave trader Marcus Gill on a trip to Texas in 1861 where they met one Joel B. Mays, a Cherokee Scot, and they joined the Cherokees living there. Mays was a Confederate sympathizer and a war chief of the Cherokee Band. Originally from Georgia, Mays had lived in the Indian Territory since 1838, and he enlisted as a private in Company A, 1st Cherokee Regiment in the Confederate Army. It was Mays who taught Quantrill guerrilla warfare methods, tactics, ambush skills, camouflage, stalking, and tracking. When the Civil War erupted, Quantrill joined the Confederate Army. Then he was later assigned to Colonel John T. Hughes on March 11, 1862, all serving under General Sterling Price, operating as raiders. They served in the battles of Wilson's Creek and Lexington, Missouri, then at the Confederate defeat at the Battle of Pea Ridge from March 6 to 8, 1862, with the Union taking control of Missouri for the rest of the war. Quantrill, Mays, and 10 other men followed Quantrill full-time in his pro-Confederate guerrilla organization, and the Cherokee nations joined with General Sterling Price and fought at the Battle of Wilson's Creek, which is where bad blood began to exist. Quantrill was, according to some sources, appointed as a captain in the Confederate Army by Colonel M. Jeff Thompson following the Battle of Independence, Missouri, on August 11, 1862, but his commission is not recorded in the old archives. But it is possible. His commission, much like John S. Mosby, would be in a reserve status as a raider. In late September, Quantrill, Mays, and others deserted Price's army and fled to Blue Springs, Missouri, and to gather fighters. He claimed that his brother was killed, and he had been shot twice, robbed, and left for dead. After several days with his brother's body, he said that a Shawnee Indian found him and aided in his recovery. The problem was Quantrill did not even have an older brother. Quantrill then told the men that he had recruited that he had joined the Union Army just to locate and kill the men who attacked him and his brother. Quantrill never served in the Union Army. After deserting Price's command and deciding to fight the war his own way, he started his own small force in 1862, which he called Quantrill's Raiders. The group was made up of various criminals and social outcasts. They specialized in using guerrilla warfare tactics, wore civilian clothes most of the time, ambushing Union troops and patrols, stealing munitions, weapons, and horses, Union payrolls, as well as attacking Union sympathizers. Quantrill finally had around 400 men to attack Union supporters and troops along the Missouri-Kansas border, becoming a major threat. Then Quantrill met Sarah Catherine King, and they married in secret due to her family not approving of him or the relationship, as she was apparently only 13 years old, so she lived with the Raiders in their various camps and took his middle name, Clark, as her married name. Not long afterward, in 1862, the Raiders' numbers grew, with John Barrett, John Brown, not the abolitionist, Cole Younger, William T. Bloody Bill Anderson, and Frank and Jesse James joining Quantrill's Raiders. On March 7, 1862, Quantrill's Raiders attacked a Union outpost in Aubrey, Kansas. Quantrill's Raiders were becoming notorious. Before dawn on September 7, 1862, 140 Raiders attacked Olathe, Kansas, capturing 125 U.S. Army soldiers. On October 5, 1862, Quantrill sacked and attacked Shawneetown, Kansas. Later, William T. Anderson returned and set fire to the town as the locals were rebuilding. On November 5, 1862, Quantrill joined Colonel Warner Lewis to stage an attack on Lamar, Missouri, where a company of the 8th Regiment Missouri Volunteer Cavalry protected a U.S. Army outpost. Warned about the attack, the U.S. soldiers repelled the invaders, who torched part of the town before they retreated. Quantrill's Raiders became a main focus of the Union Army in that area, and federal authorities, after the Lawrence Massacre on August 21, 1863, when Quantrill led approximately 450 Confederate Raiders into the town of Lawrence, a Unionist and anti-slavery stronghold that was also home to Republican Senator James H. Lane, who had become a target of pro-slavery forces. Quantrill hated Lane, well known as a Jayhawker, who had authorized guerrilla raids against pro-slavery civilians in Missouri. Due to Lane's activities and the deaths of 9 local citizens, including the sacking of Osceola, Missouri 2 years previously, particularly incensed Quantrill. Lane managed to escape, but Quantrill's men killed between 160 and 190 men and boys, many in cold blood, before looting and burning much of the town before they rode out, and burned nearly 1/4 of the town's buildings, including all but 2 businesses, robbed the bank, and looted every home. In reprisal, Union General Thomas Ewing Jr.'s General Order No. 11, on August 25, 1863, detained pro-Confederate civilians and systematically depopulated 4 Missouri counties along the Kansas border. Union soldiers gathered every civilian to determine their loyalties. Among those arrested were several female relatives and friends of Quantrill's Raiders, with the women kept in a temporary jail in Kansas City. On August 13, 1863, the building collapsed, killing 4 of the prisoners, including the sister of William T. Bloody Bill Anderson. A few days later, a 5th girl died from her injuries. Most of the men involved in the Lawrence Massacre had already fled to Texas, taking Union payroll money and an untold number of guns in a wagon, and the Raiders splintered into several smaller bands, primarily 2 groups, each led by his junior officers, such as William T. Anderson and one other officer, unknown. On the way to Texas, Quantrill raided the federal outpost of Fort Blair in southeast Kansas near Baxter Springs. As Quantrill's advance scouts neared the fort on October 6, 1863, they surprised a black officer and a civilian practicing their marksmanship and murdered both unsuspecting men. Quantrill then split his force and attacked Fort Blair from 2 directions. At around noon, the Raiders attacked the 90 soldiers as they sat down for lunch outside the fort, and Union soldiers fled for safety of the fort and managed to stave off the attack. Quantrill halted the attack after losing 10 men, as well as the element of surprise. After that failure at Fort Blair, the Raiders attacked a Union wagon train led by Major General James G. Blunt, which included his entire staff and a military band accompanied by a few cavalrymen on their way to Fort Smith, Arkansas. Concealing most of his men in a grove of nearby trees, Quantrill, in a ruse de guerre, sent an advance party in Union uniforms to ride forward to meet Blunt, who sent his chief scout, Captain William Tuff, forward to meet the advancing party. Tuff soon recognized the approaching riders as members of Quantrill's band of raiders, and he beat a hasty retreat to warn Blunt. But Tuff's warning was too late for Blunt to mount a defense against the guerrillas who swarmed out of the woods. Many of the Union men ran, and the Raiders quickly rode them down and killed them. The Raiders also killed others trying to escape on foot or after surrendering. They murdered the band members who were unarmed. With over 80 of his men dead, Blunt and 14 of his men escaped by hiding in the thick woods or tall grass. Then, once reaching Texas, the Raiders for some reason targeted pro-Confederate residents, and on March 28, 1864, the local authorities arrested Quantrill for murdering a Confederate officer. Quantrill escaped before his trial and fled into Indian Territory. Afterward, his outfit dispersed initially into the original 2 elements led by Lieutenants George Todd and Bill Anderson. This one group under Anderson began handing out rifles and ammunition in a deal with the Comanches and Apache, converting them over to fight the Union, while Quantrill went back to Missouri and reunited with his young wife Kate to hide out for a while. Late in 1864, Quantrill gathered some raiders and reportedly hatched a plot to travel to Washington to assassinate President Abraham Lincoln. The Raiders left for that mission in December 1864 and crossed the Mississippi River on New Year's Day, headed for Kentucky, but that plan was abandoned and they resorted to more criminal activity. Quantrill's fortunes turned for the worse when on May 10, 1865, a band of federal irregulars found Quantrill and his men in a barn owned by James H. Wakefield in Taylorsville in Spencer County, Kentucky. During the battle, Quantrill was shot in the back as he tried to ride away. The Union soldiers took the paralyzed desperado to a military hospital in Louisville, where he died a few weeks later on June 6, 1865, at age 27. William C. Quantrill was buried in St. John's Catholic Cemetery in Louisville, although some of his remains were later reinterred in Dover, Ohio, and Higginsville, Missouri. The skull became a curiosity that college fraternities used in rituals until they ended up with the Dover Historical Society in 1972. In 1992, the organization reunited with the bones with those brought from Louisville in 1887. To the Union, he was just another outlaw and leader of a terrorist group. To many Confederates, he was an avenging demon helping the cause. His legacy and legend was enhanced due to the later escapades of some of his soldiers, such as the James and Younger brothers. His value to the Confederacy is debatable, although the Union did spend a lot of time, money, and manpower trying to locate and defeat the Raiders. What is not in dispute is his legacy of terror and the legendary criminals spawned from his guerrilla unit, such as Cole Younger and Frank and Jesse James. These famous outlaws used the guerrilla warfare tactics from their days with the Raiders to become the most famous outlaws in U.S. history. But were the Quantrill Raiders a viable and effective component of the Confederacy? We will let you decide. Thanks for watching today's episode of Forgotten History. If you like this episode, please consider becoming a channel member or joining our Patreon page. This would help us offset the ever-increasing cost of production. As always, please like, share, and comment. And if you have any show ideas, please contact us, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Until next time.